members to the funeral procession, and my dad was the one that was asked to do that. And ever since then, I've been kind of just mesmerized with President Eisenhower and all things Eisenhower. And it's great to be the senator from Kansas. Just grew up an hour and a half from where he was born and raised. It's great to be back home in Junction City. I tell you, it feels like home. I get within about 90 miles of my home, and I feel pretty good. Buzz, it's great to see you. Appreciate your help on our Military Affairs Council as well. And there's so many great things going on. I'm here today to listen. I'm a much better listener than I am a talker. I got a couple of questions for you all. Anybody here travel more than 30 miles to get here? Okay, you get the first question or comment if you want it. You don't have to. I appreciate our police, our sheriff's officers being here today with us. I appreciate all you do. I remember last November, stopped to see my folks in El Dorado, and my mom, the wife of a career police officer, has looked at me and said, Roger, I don't know why anyone would want to be in law enforcement these days. And I can tell you I'm going to keep sticking up for our law enforcement. So my polling questions. Anybody in the audience think it's time to tear down the fence outside of the Capitol? Okay. Anybody in the audience thinks there's a crisis at the border? Absolutely. Okay, here's the trick question. I want you guys to take a picture of this. Okay. Anybody in the room have their ID, their name, their social security number used in some type of a fraudulent unemployment insurance claim? Yeah. This is the 18th, 19th town hall I've done in the past month, and in every community I've asked that question. I'm going to guess about 20% of people in the room will raise their hand, and almost everybody in the room has a friend or a child or their spouse or something that's had that happen as well. So that gives me a feel for who the crowd is, and at least I got to take my informal poll. I'm going to stop and listen, and if you've got a question, a comment, I'm happy just to listen as well. Sir, you can have the first one if you want it.
Sure. My question is about big tech and repealing 230, Section 230.
Right.
Where are we at with that, or where do you stand on?
Right. I would be in favor of repealing Section 230. I think the overall question is just how much power and control does big tech have? Pretty much monopolies now. And I'm also very interested in legislation that will allow other companies to move into those spaces and try to give those big ones competition. I certainly think we need an attorney general that's willing to stand up to big tech as well. And one of the general problems we have in this country is consolidations of industry, whether it's the packing plants or pharmacy benefit managers or big tech. Because of all the rules and laws, only big companies can survive. It's hurting community pharmacists, it's hurting community banks, all those types of things. So what I think Facebook and Twitter have to decide, are they a publisher and should have the same responsibilities as your local TV, your local radio station, your local newspapers do? Or are they the town square, where anyone can go to the town square and say, here's what I think, right? But now once you start censoring people, that feels like a publisher to me. If they're going to censor me, and I've been censored, I took an article, a report, a graph from the CDC, literally a graph on COVID and comorbidities, and published it on my Facebook site, and they took it down. I didn't change a word. I didn't make an editorial comment. They didn't like the narrative, so they took it down. So it sounds to me like that they're a publisher now, and they're in the world of censoring. There's not much oxygen left in DC right now. So I don't hear many people talking about it. I don't see the Committee of Jurisdiction talking about it. So I would say it's pretty quiet. And I don't have to tell you that big tech invested a tremendous amount of money in President Biden and the House and Senate majorities right now as well. So I don't see it moving very far very quickly. I wish I could say differently, but that's where we are. Okay? Anybody else?
Well, I was just going to say I support you in the DC. If DC wants to be part of, if they want to vote for senators and have a congressman, then they should be part of Maryland. I totally agree with that. And so I think a congressman from South Dakota has kind of been on this too, or?
So the House has introduced a bill, and I introduced one on the Senate side yesterday.
So, I mean, yeah, I think that's smart. The other, kind of an amendment that I would like to see is the Supreme Court be locked in at 9 justices and also get term limits. I would love to see, a 20-year term limit or something, We still have them go through the next president, so, a president elects it, and then it's basically to check the next president, but then after that, that's stuff I would do.
Great, appreciate your comments. Certainly one of the House passed legislation, pretty much on partisans to give DC their own statehood, which would give the Democrats 2 more senators, and it's just part of the power grab that's going on right now. So if their argument is that the people live in DC, their argument is they want representation, they could easily go back into Maryland, and then we would just carve out, the mall and the Capitol and the White House and make that the District of Columbia, if that's really what they want. But what they're really after is 2 more Democrat senators. That's really what their motivation is. On the Supreme Court side of things, I think we might as well just tackle the bigger issue and then dive down as much as you want to. I think 9 is right. 9 is just fine. There we go, that's my saying. 9 is just fine. We've had 9 Supreme Court justices since around 1870. I may be off 10 years. Even liberal Supreme Court justices think that 9 is just fine. The term limit, I'm not going to argue one way or the other. I haven't thought much about that. That would, I assume, would take a constitutional amendment to do that. Versus they could change the number of 9 in the Supreme Court. I think they could do it even with just 50 votes, 51 votes theoretically. Would not, because there's nothing in the Constitution about having just 9. So I think 9 is just fine. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, other liberal Supreme Court justice thinks 9 is just fine as well. Again, it's a power grab. And really, what the underlying situation is, the Democrats that are supporting that are trying to threaten the Supreme Court. It's like holding something over their head. If you don't give us more liberal rulings, we're going to add 4 Supreme Court justices. So for me, it's been fun to watch the Democrats form kind of a circular firing squad and shoot each other. I think several of their own members got out over their skis a little bit and upset Speaker Pelosi, which isn't easy to do. So I'm going to do everything I can to keep it just fine. And the last explanation point of why they want to pack the court. If you're going to pass unconstitutional laws, you need a liberal Supreme Court to turn your head on those unconstitutional laws. Whether it's taking away our freedom of speech or freedom of religion or our Second Amendment rights. If they're going to do that, which is unconstitutional, then they want a liberal Supreme Court to turn their head and not do what they need to do. Yes, ma'am.
It hasn't Trump been, you packed the court for the last 4 years. I mean, I don't like it when they say they're trying to pack the court. Because there was over, 200 empty court seats when Obama left because McConnell wouldn't even give him any nomination hearings.
Right.
So he left 200 openings for Trump to pack the court.
Right.
So I just don't like that term. I don't mind the whole, I like 9 too. I think that's fine. But I don't like the idea when Republicans come out and say they're trying to pack the courts. When the fact is that they have a stolen seat because he wouldn't give Merrick Garland a hearing, and then they turn around and push through a Supreme Court justice where people were already voting for president. So that's kind of disingenuous to say that they're trying to pack the courts.
So I disagree with you. What would you like for us to call it?
They're just trying to expand the court. You just disagree with the idea of expanding the court.
Okay.
I don't think that because the fact is that the Republicans have been packing the courts, the federal courts, for the last 4 years with conservatives. And many of those were ranked not qualified by the American Bar Association. True. And they pushed it through anyway.
Yeah. So of all the things I'm proud of what we've accomplished under President Trump, it was the solid judges that we did get confirmed, over 200 of them. So what you're criticizing, I'm very proud of. But that's why it's America. We get to disagree.
And we're from the same area. We disagree on almost everything. I was born in Great Bend and raised in Hoisington.
There you go.
Yeah. So I said, I just don't like that term because I think it's kind of disingenuous.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I agree with you on everything.
It's America.
Yes, and I'm feeling helpless because I don't like what I'm seeing with the grab, because I think he's using his pen to just write everything in. know what I can do in Manhattan, Kansas to help you out every day. So you know I'm behind you. I appreciate you standing up for the mask thing. I don't understand if we're vaccinated, why we have to wear a mask. So what can I do to help you?
Well, great. So I appreciate the words of encouragement. First of all, I bet you're praying for me already.
I am.
And pray for my family.
Okay.
This job is harder on my family than it is on me. And that's, I'm getting what I signed up for. I'm not complaining. Words of encouragement like that are fine. Usually just hear from people when they're complaining. So I appreciate the words of encouragement. Elections have consequences.
Yeah.
And I think some senators will sit up here and say, well, write the other senators from other states or something. That's not going to do any good at all. I think what you can do for me is get people out to vote here in 2 years. And maybe, I'm going to encourage you. I think we need a change in Topeka, and I think there's one district in Kansas that's controlled by a liberal person that would disagree with me. So I think whatever we can do on that line is to support people. But I also think, though, that at the local level, having conservatives at the city commission, the county commission, in Topeka, your state reps, all those things put wind beneath my sail to do those. So thank you. And I bet we'll come back to some of your issues if we don't get to here. Go ahead.
I'm a county commissioner here in Geary County. I just got sworn in.
What is your name?
Trish Giordano.
Trish,
I'm
my
also
pleasure.
retired law enforcement, so I appreciate your support for them.
You bet.
I just wanted to ask, in reference to the recovery, I know in the Recovery Act it does say that areas that have a lot of Corps of Engineer property as well as federal property, which Geary County has both, would receive a little bit more extra monies. I just want to make sure that we are receiving what we should be getting to help our community recover. And then the next issue I wanted to address is we had a town hall with our state reps, and they talked about the veterans home that they're wanting to put in the area of northeast Kansas. And Geary County wasn't even mentioned, which kind of upsets me because we do have a lot of veterans here in our community, and we'd like to keep them here in our community. So having a veterans home, so I didn't know what we could do to advocate that, to bring something like that to our community.
Great. So we're going to go out to Milford when we're done here and kind of catch up on a project out there we've been following for a couple of years as well. And it's hard for me to micromanage all the different grants going on, but Katie Sawyer here.
Yes, I spoke to her.
is my state director. She lives down by McPherson and is in Salina at our office there. And I would probably, if you were truly interested, is to bring a couple of folks and sit down with Katie, and she's through here every week, and to say, and maybe she can kind of walk you through what is available. I'm ready to just hire a grant writer of ourselves, but it's really, lots of times we miss out on the grants because we don't apply for them. On the Soldiers Home, I just would like for Kansas to have another one, and I don't want to sit here and put one county against another. The community up there is really the one that's got this fired up, so they're leading on it. And I'm going to guess, though, that there's a lot more veterans in northeast Kansas than there are here. I know it's going to surprise you, but I know there's more veterans in Johnson County than any other. But I'd be for both of them, but I don't want to choose it, and I'll be shocked if we get any, but I'll try. You want to go next?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So I'm a former behavioral health officer in the Kansas National Guard and formerly in active duty. I am months from having a book published on suicides, particularly in the military. And I have a specific question that comes from one of the victims of suicide from Kansas. His question for you is, why did we not have mandatory guidelines for mental health providers to refer patients to after they've given medications for anxiety, depression, and other mental health symptoms to a mental health therapist? Why are there not mandatory guidelines mandating that? And I see this too as a provider.
So someone wrote you.
Yeah, this is from a Kansas National Guard suicide victim, father.
Oh, a father of the victim.
Father of the victim.
Okay.
And who was also in the state leadership, Kansas National Guard. As a mental health provider, I see this all too often. People, inundated by psychopharmacology here, meds. And I treat a lot of PTSD. I'm a trauma victim provider. That's what I hone in on. too often people are on 16, 17 different medications, not uncommon, but yet haven't been seen for a mental health provider. To me, that is clinical malpractice at its worst, because we're delaying what is effective and what's helpful. But and I've got tons of literature in the book, that talks about just how ineffective psychopharmacology is in treating PTSD particularly, but yet we see it over-medicated. This is a big issue with our veterans, just totally overly medicated, and then they're not getting the help that they need. So being a resident, well, not resident, but from Junction City myself, I echo what Trish is saying. This community, and several law enforcement officers can tell you this community has been ravaged by suicides through and through for the last several years. There's something going on Fort Riley. I'll tell you, I've turned into an investigator, and for all the right reasons. And so I just, as a medical provider yourself, what do you say to that father?
First of all, there's a mental health crisis across this country.
Absolutely.
This is the worst situation I've ever seen for mental health. I think the masks add to it. I think the mandates, I think locking people down. I think that more children will die from suicide and drug addiction created by the rules we put in place because of COVID virus. And I think going forward, I bet more people die from suicides and mental health exacerbations, and I put lump substance abuse together. I think it's all one big thing, okay? So first of all, I acknowledge, and I've been following the suicide situation here very closely. I have more questions than answers. As a federal legislator, though, I've tried to allocate more monies to help the people that need it. I mean, literally tens of billions of extra dollars to help with the mental health issues across the country. I think a lot of those grants are just now taking effect. I agree with you that people make the difference, not the drugs. The drugs tend to mask the problem, help people to get through those tough times. But I don't like mandates. I just can't imagine what mandate I could agree with to say that every person that takes X medicine has to see a therapist. But I think that that's the right thing to do. I just don't know you want your federal government to be mandating and micromanaging it. So we're trying to allocate more resources, and certainly with your senior leadership here at Fort Riley and really across the military, we're having these same discussions. And they acknowledge the problem and then talking about solutions. And what I can't do, even though I have insight into military, I have military experience, I have insight into mental health, but I can't micromanage it. I think that the mental health challenges at Fort Riley, soldiers, is going to be a little bit different than the farmer in western Kansas, different than the 10-year-old who's been in isolation for a year and a half as well. So agree on the big picture, and the frustration you're sensing for me is I've known this for 25 years. In my 25 years of practicing medicine, we've seen incredible improvement in cancer treatment and heart treatment, and really every area of medicine but one. And we have new drugs, new and improved drugs, really expensive drugs, but there's usually something inside here that's still broken we can't fix. I think that the success I've seen, typically there's a spiritual component to this success, and relationships, and I'm just throwing my hands up today and say I would love to fix this problem, and we'll keep trying. We have a shortage of professionals like you're describing as well. Telemedicine is something that we've supported. So something I have been able to accomplish is for people to do telemedicine and the doctor to get paid, or the therapist to get paid for as well. So I'm trying. I think we're in a little better place today than we were 3 years ago, but I'm not convinced. I formed committees, I prayed about it, I sat down with all the experts in the state and say, what else can we do? But I'm as frustrated as you are. I'll keep trying. And I appreciate your passion, compassion for it as well. I'm sure there's a reason. PTSD, wow, what a box, a black box that nobody understands, right? It's just hard to put the pieces together.
But there are a lot of people that understand it, and what I'm working on is Senate hearings. I'm trying to get Senate hearings with two particular professionals. Phenomenal, changed my life and changed the patients that I'm serving's lives. And I almost, I would say, miraculous. And without taking that to the people of our government that can start buying in and that it trickles down. You know, and in my professional opinion, psychopharmacology is running this nation, and the people that are benefiting in that industry financially, to where it turns into a massive problem.
Right.
For us worker bees.
Boy, I would love if you got some really good condensed information to give it to Katie. You got a card, Katie, as well, and we could talk the rest of the day. One of the challenges, though, that I see as the doctor taking care of people with some of these anxiety, depression problems, is they think that there's this drive-through mentality among society that, look, I want to drive through McDonald's, I want the burger my way, I want the pill here, and this, and this as well. So I understand your points, but that's what the patient's demanding, and I think there's a little bit of that going on, but it's a big box. You better move on. Yes, sir, in the back.
I only got to make a comment on it. The problem too with the soldiers these days, and they're continuously turning around and going back to the same thing. When they get back here, they don't have a whole time to be with their families. They don't want to listen to what the soldiers say. They want to hand them a handful of pills. I've talked to soldiers across the United States, from Iraq and all that. That's some of the problems, especially in California. Californians have a problem with the veterans on medications. Give them a medication that works. Don't give them a handful of pills and tell them take one every day and come back in 6 months. And that's basically what I see happening with these individuals up on Fort Riley. They're not listening to them. You know, there's nobody listening to them pretty much. They come out on the street. They meet these guys here in the uniform, and next thing you know, they're ending up in jail because the medication didn't do what it was supposed to do, and they took it as a defensive reaction, and then they got to deal with them here. So that's one of the problems. You know.
All right, thank you. Thanks.
I wanted to tell you that I was very happy to see that you were supportive of working with President Trump on the trade agreements with China and Japan. This is like a total different topic. And I'm from Barton County, from Ellenwood, born at St. Rose 1,500 years ago. But
Me too.
for the first time, probably in a decade, if not longer, the family farm north of Ellenwood actually made a bit of a profit, a substantial income, and I really put that forward to the trade agreements. And do you think those trade agreements are going to stay in place, or do you think they're going to be rescinded as so many of the other accomplishments of President Trump?
Right. So I think they'll stay in place. I think they'll stay in place. And I am very proud of the trade agreements we did. As agriculture goes, so goes Kansas. You know, you think about Kansas, you think about agriculture, aerospace industry, military, and healthcare, and I probably just caught about 90% of the economy of Kansas. So we renegotiated over 50% of the ag trade agreements with the nations important to Kansas. So China, Japan, South Korea, Mexico, and Canada represents over 55% of our trade. Record amounts of products from Kansas in the country from ag going into China right now. $35 billion worth in the past year. It had bottomed out at about $9 million, so it's went from $9 billion to $35 billion. So from an agriculture standpoint, they're living up to that trade agreement. I've had discussions with the new United States Trade Representative, Catherine Tai, and surely she's committed. China's going to be a lot about politics going forward as well, and I can't predict them as well as I can some other countries, but I think they're pretty motivated right now to stay in those agreements. They really can't grow enough food to feed themselves. They've got Australia mad at them, so they're buying more American beef, and the great thing about American beef is once you taste it, no one else can make beef like we do. It is addictive. as we can tell here, right? So we have a great product and a great market out there. The Japanese market is growing as well, South Korea, and I think there's opportunities in Southeast Asia as well. Our challenges right now are the European Union that wants to block all agriculture out. And President Trump stood up to them and said, look, if you're going to lock agriculture out, then we're going to slap tariffs on your luxury cars and your fine wines and champagne. So I'm more focused. I think we can keep what we've got. Mexico and Canada agreement, which are typically number 1 and 3 in our ag trade agreement. So although China's kind of nudging them out of the way, those are pretty steady. And I think that there's other opportunities to start working on for agriculture. I mentioned the European Union, Great Britain, India as well. So we're going to keep at it. It's a huge priority for me, is trying to increase our ag exports. And there's so many great value-added things going on in agriculture right now that I'm excited about. Garden City, Hugoton, I was down there last week. They're taking the fat that from the meat processing, they're taking that fat and then turning it into some type of biofuel or renewable biodiesel, those types of things. So I think there's even more opportunities out there for agriculture. Pets, pet food, any type of animal health is just a great opportunity for Kansas as well. I don't know about your family, but my wife will look to see what the price of beef is at the counter when she goes, but when it comes to her dog, she doesn't look at the price. She just gets the best one, the one that she thinks is the best. So right now, Kansas makes over half of the dog pet food for the entire nation. And I see that going up, as well as just animal health care in general. So those are some of the opportunities in agriculture. So I'm pretty bullish right now. Yes, let's hear it. You already have to go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I have a question then. You talk about the agricultural, and as a landowner, right now Biden's proposing the 30% land, 30% water. Can you explain that? I mean, to me, that doesn't sound like conservation. That sounds like confiscation.
There you go. Yeah, I'm against it, first of all. So I'm against the government seizing private property.
Was that the 30-30 question? Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can sure repeat it if you guys can hear. You guys questions about the 30-30 program. So I'm not seeing anything in writing yet what it really means. Certainly I'm not seeing any law proposed or anything like that. But President Biden has stated as a goal to have 30% of American land and water tied up in conservation somehow. So whether that's through like a CRP program, a conservation reserve project like we have in Kansas, or if that means the federal government owning it, I don't know, but I'm going to be against it. The problem with taking productive land out of production is it hurts more than just the farmer. So if we put more land into CRP, the local co-ops, the people that sell seed, the people that sell fertilizer, the people that sell tractors and combines, it hurts their businesses as well. So I just don't want the government annexing that. But I also want to talk about conservation in a second too. What people are doing is conflating the historical program. Katie, what's it called? The historical
out at Milford?
No.
Oh.
In central Kansas and north central
Oh,
Kansas.
National Heritage Area.
National Heritage Area. So people are conflating National Heritage Areas with this 30 for 30. A National Heritage Area is a place where a local community says we want to apply for a grant so we can promote vacationers, tourists to stop by and see the local history of the community, right? We have one of those in Lawrence, and there's some folks in north central Kansas that are looking at one as well. The local community would have to support it, and then Congress would decide whether to appropriate money, but it's totally different than the 30-30 program, okay? So I'll be against it. I think it's a pipe dream right now, but I thought the Green New Deal, I laughed when I heard it the first time, and now President Biden is proposing the Green New Deal in his so-called infrastructure plan.
That was my question about the infrastructure. Okay, can I?
I was gonna say, they take 30% of all the land out, who's gonna feed everybody?
Yep, exactly.
It's just,
It would kill our economy.
oh, yeah,
It kills small towns.
Yes,
yeah,
destroy
oh,
it.
yeah, it did, and, I mean, what people in New York, what are they gonna eat?
Well, yeah, it's not just about, it's about China, it's about the whole global.
Yeah.
We're not growing new farmland everywhere, we got what we got.
Yep, and we've been blessed, we have no idea how blessed we've been to not have to worry about, can we grow enough bread? We grow enough bread for our country and half the world.
Yeah, only so much dirt in the world.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Well, I was gonna piggyback off trade. Are you guys getting, like, Democrats and Republicans sort of on the same page on trade? Or, I mean, I know I've kind of heard some bad talk to China from Biden, but I don't know.
I don't have a good answer for you. I think there's not much oxygen left in Washington, D.C., and I haven't heard trade really come up in any type of conversations outside of confirming the USTR, the U.S. trade draft, those types of things. So I really haven't heard much talk about it. I don't think it just seems like it's not a priority for the Biden administration right now, and they're more concerned. To them, what trade is about is the environment. So they're more interested in making. And I do want our environment to be better. I want to leave this world cleaner, healthier, safer than I found it. I just don't think the government rules and regulations are going to do it. I think innovation will do it. American entrepreneurs are going to do it. So their focus on foreign countries right now is the environment. That's what I'm hearing about. I'm not sure where the Democrats will be. I think that's typically a bipartisan opportunity, though. Buzz, go ahead. You haven't had one yet. Go ahead.
We have 3 major military installations on Kansas, which provide a major source of revenue in the state of Kansas.
Right.
And presently, we do not have representation in Congress from the state of Kansas. What does it take to get somebody in that representation of that committee?
You have to be from Texas, it looks like. Buzz, I don't know, what to tell you. My first pick has always been agriculture, and then I kind of get given to me what I get given to me. So whenever I use my ag card, then I lose my card for one of the military committees, if that makes sense. That they're not going to let me be on agriculture and a military committee. Both are A committees. So that's kind of why I get pushed out of it. I'm surprised that our 4 state representatives, that none of them have been able to secure that. I don't have a good answer for you. She was next. I'll come back to you guys. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, if they do start tearing apart the Constitution, like if they do pack the court, would it do any good for us to go to Washington and protest? Or are they just not gonna listen to us?
I'm hesitant to, I don't know that today it would do a lot of good. I still think that voting and elections is what we need to focus on. Okay. Yep.
Mine was on the infrastructure.
Okay.
Republicans have been promising infrastructure week or infrastructure for 4 years and didn't get done. And they don't seem to like the one that's there. So are they going to come up with their own bill? I heard Biden say the other day that Republicans are welcome to introduce their own infrastructure bill, which we've kind of been waiting for years. So are you planning on doing that so we can get, the electrical grids and the seaport, the railroads, Republicans seem to think that infrastructure is only highways and bridges, but it's a lot more than that, as we found out in the freeze, and it's electrical. And I lived in Southwest Kansas for 40 years, and the broadband is not real good out there. And so
you might be surprised today. We've done a lot of work on broadband. So to answer your question, we did
get together on this.
We did. Okay. So yesterday, a $600 billion infrastructure plan was released by Republicans. Okay, and the focus is roads and bridges, twice the amount of money that President Biden has in his infrastructure plan. Okay, for roads and bridges, it includes high-speed internet, waterways, sewers, water systems, the things that you would think of as traditional infrastructure. But here's my concern with President Biden's so-called infrastructure plan. It's really a grab your wallet plan. It's going to raise your taxes plan, and it's the Green New Deal plan. There's only $115 billion for roads and bridges.
But it wasn't, except over 400,000. You have to be sure and say that. It wasn't raising taxes on anybody under 400.
That's not true either, but we'll come back to that. Okay? You just think.
Again, you don't want to mistake things.
I'm not mistaking it. I think that you're being a little gullible. Do you think if they're going to raise corporate taxes, it's not going to increase the price of goods at the grocery store, or that they're going to cause wages to go down? I think there's lots of good studies that says that working Americans will bear the brunt of 70% of the taxes on corporate American increases, and it's going to kill jobs. But this, we can argue about this, but we can't argue about what I'm saying next. President Biden's program is $115 billion for roads and bridges, but $170 billion for electric car chargers.
Yeah.
Okay? So 115 for traditional infrastructure, 170 for electric car chargers. His bill is going to help China more than it's going to help Americans. So you realize that China dominates the batteries and as well as the solar panels. They probably make 70 or 80% of them in the world. So this is really more money going to China. So this is, the Green New Deal will be implemented. Their idea of infrastructure is a wind turbine in every backyard and a solar panel on every house. They're going to drive the cost of gasoline to $5 a gallon, and they're going to double the cost of electricity for you to heat your houses with if we implement his plan. There's a cost associated with all of this. And like I said earlier, I'm much in favor of leaving this country cleaner, healthier, safer than I found it. But the carbon footprint of this country is at a 25-year low. We've decreased it 14% over the past decade. We're going in the right direction. I was in Garden City a week ago Thursday. They're recirculating, reusing about 95% of their water. Every business that's being made today are doing things more efficiently. Someone that has like over 200 of the big trucks to transport the milk. We have the fastest growing dairy industry in the country, by the way. They take their used oil and taking that to heat the garage where they work on their own trucks. So we're getting there. A place that grows pigs are taking the waste from the pigs and turning that into some type of a natural gas. So we need to keep doing those things. But I'm afraid this Green New Deal is just going to make the cost of living such that hardworking Americans can't afford it.
Don't you think the Green New Deal calls for a whole lot of Green New Deal jobs?
I don't. I think that the jobs are going to end up in China.
To work for that, it's all gonna be computerized. It's all gonna be.
Yeah, I think it'll kill Kansas jobs is what I think.
The whole plan
Oil
is-
and gas industry is so important to the state of Kansas. They paid $1.4 billion in taxes last year. The oil and gas industry did. I think the Green New Deal is going to end up with $8 an hour jobs if we can get those from China. And there's just not many Americans want to work for $8 an hour.
I had been reading some articles on Bermuda, and it had stated that China had bought lots of land mass in Bermuda, plus they had built a naval station. So, it's only, 65 miles off the coast of the United States. Has that ever come up as a piece of national defense concern?
Bermuda specifically, no. But the bigger picture of trying to understand what China's Silk Road Initiative is, yes. So even right now, China's using vaccine diplomacy. So they're down in South America saying, if you want us to sell you vaccines, then you have to do X, Y, and Z for us, right? So this is nothing new. It's going on across the world. Basic model that China does is they come in and loan you money. They're a loan shark. They'll loan you money to build a port, but then when you can't afford to pay for it, they take it over. I was in Djibouti. The same thing had happened there as well. So this is a common theme. Yes, we see it, and that's why Americans and our leadership needs to wake up and say, okay, wait a second. China is very much a real threat to this country. They are the biggest long-term threat to this country. I think our biggest our immediate national security issue is our southern border, but just the whole philosophy certainly has our attention.
Thank you.
You bet. Yes, sir.
I was going back to infrastructure. I support the Keystone Pipeline. So that's a big piece of infrastructure that Republicans support. And it's privately, it's businesses that would build it and run it, and that's something that we've fought with Obama on, and now Biden looks like, right?
Right. Here's the frustration: is that was all litigated, it was discussed and approved by the federal government, right? And now those people that invested dollars have had the rug pulled out from under them. That's what Americans don't like. That's how you kill business, is to constantly changing the rules. Yes, sir.
I said, then we're opening up a pipeline over in Europe and Asia and Africa to make up for the Keystone Pipeline, which is crap.
Yep.
This is a joke what we're doing over there. I That's not what I came to talk about.
Okay.
I noticed everything in here, we talk about PSD, farming and everything. We need to legalize cannabis, we need to end cannabis prohibition, we need to have hemp, we need to have medical marijuana, we need to have recreational marijuana. No reason an adult should be in jail for enjoying a flower.
Yeah, I don't think I can ever get there. Yeah, I can't ever get there. I can't ever get there. I just think it's a gateway drug.
You wanna put me in jail for enjoying a flower,
No.
just say it then. Just say it.
All right, thank you.
It's not a gateway drug.
Yes, sir.
Off the subject a little bit, but you touched on this when we first walked in about unemployment and fraud. I have a personal problem, and I've been trying to contact unemployment for 2 months. I'm a veteran, I work on Fort Raleigh, I'm in between jobs right now. I became unemployed at the end of February. I've been trying for 2 months, and I know I just had the opportunity to come and see you, but for 2 months, trying to call the governor's office, you can't call the unemployment office, you can't speak to anyone for 2 months. I accidentally, through my employer, gave a phone number to speak to the employer side of the house. And I was told that I was turned over to the fraud department. And I'm asking you, what does people do? And I'm speaking for a lot of people right now that's unemployed. 260 people got laid off from the contract that I worked on. Majority of them live in Junction City, and they have yet to be able to get through on the phone system. To the governor's office, I've hit read off for 8 hours a day trying to get a hold of somebody. And all they can tell me, I did accidentally, now they won't answer the phone. I was told that I was turned over to the fraud department, but they couldn't tell me why. And they couldn't tell me who to speak to. So I know that's off the subject.
No, it's not, it is the subject.
It's really sad that in this state, that we can't call the governor's office, and I hate to be here saying this to you, and I agree with everything you're saying, but there's a lot of people out here that's trying to contact the unemployment office and have been for 2 months. You can't speak to them. So where do you go? What do you do?
Right. So I want you to give us your name and number.
I have contacted your office.
But we have literally 10 people on average every day contact our office with this same story. This is the #1 phone call, email our office has been getting since, I don't know, last May or June probably, and it's not gotten any better. So we gave the job of the federal government, we said, here's the money, and then it's their job to distribute it. Obviously, the governor's been incompetent on this issue.
She is.
And I just don't have any other way to say it, but they've been incompetent on trying to solve this problem. And the people of Kansas I bet will hold her responsible here in a year.
Well, I hope they do, and I apologize, but I'm really upset that for 2 months, and I know I'm going back to work, but I'm speaking for a lot of people that I know that have been trying to call the unemployment office, and you cannot speak to anyone.
And we have
but yet you're being told
they won't take our call either. They won't take our call. They will not respond to us either.
you're being told that they hire all these people to answer the phones.
Okay. All right. Almost time to wrap it up. If a person hasn't had a question, yes, sir.
Well, good. I wanted to get this in. I appreciate your emails you came and bring out every single week, even since you've been congressman. I encourage everybody to sign up for those emails and forward them out to everybody you know, because there's a lot of good information in them every single week. And that's why I wanted to.
I appreciate it. It's hard to people say, where do you get the good news or the news from, right? So we're trying to be objective and say, here's some things that are happening that we think are important to Kansas. I'm very proud of
I like your videos. I wish our other senator was a little bit more proactive on that, but I appreciate your emails put out every week.
Okay. Let's see here. I think you haven't had a question yet.
I have one question. You say the way you can help with elections, but how about HR 1 and how about fair elections? I mean, that's such a gigantic question.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to tell us that our elections are going to be fair and what we're going to do?
Exactly. Just share a couple thoughts. I want voting to be easier, but cheating to be harder. I think that's our goal. We want voting to be easy, but cheating to be harder. So what I'm in favor of voter ID, but Speaker Pelosi's HR 1, not only does it not give us the freedom, it specifically says Kansas cannot have a voter ID. I think 80 or 90% of Kansans want voter ID. We want integrity of elections as well. Number 2 thing that her bill does is it promotes ballot harvesting. So it promotes the sending out of ballots, unsolicited ballots, to people that are dead or don't live here anymore, and then they pay people to go collect them and turn them in, and that dilutes my vote. It dilutes your vote. You stand in line, you get to work, you leave work early, or you leave earlier before work, you stop at the church and you vote. We get one person, one vote, and here's somebody dumping 300 ballots into a blue ballot box, right? So it dilutes ours as well. Here's the thing I really hate about their law. It'll match 6 federal dollars to $1 donation. So if somebody gives Nancy Pelosi $1, they're going to add $6 more to it. And same way for me, right? If someone gives me $1, and that's what I'm sure you all want to see, more political ads come campaign season, right? As well. So that's what's wrong with it. I think it's unconstitutional. The Constitution clearly says that the state legislature shall determine the manner of the election and how it's done in that state. And this federalizes the election. It's unconstitutional, and that's why they want to expand the court. Exactly, okay?
And are the audits fair?
Are the audits fair? Yeah, I can't speak for every state, but the states themselves need to sort this out and button things up. That's what they need to do as well.
Concerning that, are you in favor of this investigation into the January 6th insurrection? Whatever they're talking about.
As long as it's actually a fair, independent with equal representation. So if they want to appoint 6 members, we get to appoint 6 members.
Okay, because I think they need that.
Should have already been done.
Yes.
Should already been done. Portland and Seattle.
Yes, we agreed on something.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Second Amendment, what's the temperature in Washington DC on the Second Amendment?
It's probably as threatened today as it's ever been. You know, when you have one party in control of the 3 branches of government that disagree with lots of us on the Second Amendment, so they're trying to find a path forward, and I think they're going to try to keep nipping at it one way or another. Okay, all right. Well, I think we need to wrap it up, folks. I appreciate you coming in today. Thanks so much.